So why is everyone obsessing about OpenTelemetry so much? Well, in one of my previous videos where we talked about distributed tracing, which basically looks like this, where in order to understand the behavior of our system, of our microservices, and be able to debug them and look at the logs easily, we're trying to see where this trace ID gets created, and then we can correlate this trace ID together with these span IDs across microservices and see where this incoming request actually ended up. Let's say it ended up in service N. But I left this question open because we used something called OpenTelemetry in this instrumentation file. Just a bit of a background, if you haven't seen this video, I would actually recommend to go and watch this video because I would say it's definitely a prerequisite to this video. You will find it in the description below. But basically, we had an AppTS, which is acting like a load balancer. We had service A and service B. So it's basically, this is the gateway, the load balancer, AKA, it's going to route the request to either service A or service B. And we had this instrumentation TS, which is going to spin up our logging library. In this case, we're using Zipkin. And it's also going to use auto instrumentation from OpenTelemetry. Now, again, what is OpenTelemetry? Let's actually try to figure this out. So OpenTelemetry, I would say, is a middleman. Without going into details, without looking at the documentation of OpenTelemetry, because I'm trying to explain it in a simple way. All right, you can look at the documentation after this video, but in a simple way, with simple words, OpenTelemetry is a middleman between your Node.js server or whatever server that you're using to have your API, your logging library. In this case, it's Zipkin, but can also be Pine, can also be Morgan in Node.js. And it's a middleman between this and wherever you're trying to see your logs, let's say Elasticsearch or even Zipkin itself, because Zipkin can also offer a UI. But what is the advantage? So it's kind of explained here on the actual page of OpenTelemetry. It says, why OpenTelemetry? Well, you own the data that you generate. So it's an open source protocol. And it means it's being developed. It's an open source tool. It's being developed by developers across the world, across different companies, and they simply contribute for this project. And there's no vendor lock-in, meaning if you have OpenTelemetry and your other third-party libraries are able to connect to OpenTelemetry, you can swap them easily. I'm going to come to that in a second. And second of all, you only have to learn a single set of APIs and conventions to be able to set up observability of your applications. What do I mean? Let's look at this graph. This graph is pretty self-explanatory, but it's very important to understand. So OpenTelemetry is going to be the middleman here, all right? So these are your microservices, and OpenTelemetry gives you an API to work with, an SDK to work with, an auto instrumentation. In this case, auto instrumentation basically is going to look something like this, where you simply initiate an object of your SDK, and it needs a trace exporter, metric reader, and instrumentations where we're giving our node auto instrumentation, meaning it's going to set up everything that's needed more or less out of the box. Now, the app code also needs to generate some structured logs. And as you can see, we're trying to use a Zipkin library to be able to generate the logs. But you can also use something like Morgan or Winston rather, because Winston is another popular tracing and logging library for Node.js. And Winston can also connect to OpenTelemetry right away because OpenTelemetry, or rather Winston, provides a separate library that can make this happen. All right. In this case, I'm using Zipkin. And luckily, if we go back to this graph, Zipkin also provides one of these. So where our logs and metrics are going to go to, all right? So they're going to be collected by OpenTelemetry, OTel collector, and they're going to end up in one of these databases, either time series or trace or column stores, can be anything. Basically, we call it observability frontends and API, such as Elastic. In Elastic, you basically get a dashboard like Kibana. It can also be CloudWatch from Amazon. It can even be Zipkin itself, all right? Let's look at Zipkin itself because I have it open here. because Zipkin is basically a library that can generate logs, and at the same time, it's going to spin up your front end if you use this Docker image that I'm actually running here. You can see it in one of the previous videos. And this is basically all that you need to know about OpenTelemetry. This is why everyone is obsessed about it. But here's the catch. I mean, here's not a catch, but here's the biggest deal, basically, that I'm trying to convey with this video. You can change the logging library here within your application. And you can change your observability front end, okay? You can choose whatever you want, but OpenTelemetry is gonna stay there, which means it makes your life easier, okay? So you're not being vendor locked, because if you're trying to change the library, you can easily do that as long as there's an instrumentation for OpenTelemetry. If you like another different UI to view your logs, you can easily do that. OpenTelemetry is going to connect to it automatically, and it's going to correlate your logs with metrics and tracing and all of that automatically, okay? That's why it's so great. And also, let's answer the question, the real benefit, because here we're gonna see that the application that has auto instrumentation or manual instrumentation, manual is basically more of a thorough way of structuring your logs and metrics. Basically, they're going to emit these logs, traces, and metrics. OpenTelemetry is going to collect them and correlate them, and at the end, you can look at them. I mean, this is the backend of OpenTelemetry, but it's going to correlate all three so that it's easier to see what's happening within your application. This is what's basically observability means. All right. So this is pretty much it. Basically, a middleman that helps you with vendor locking, meaning minimizes the chances of you being a vendor locked. So you can change the library anytime you want, and you can change your observability front end whenever you want. That's pretty much it. If you like this video, smash like and subscribe. I'm going to see you in the next one. Goodbye.